Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I'm here with a card featuring Newton's Nook holiday release. They released it this past week, and normally I share my videos on the day that we reveal the stamp sets, but there was just a lot of videos that I had to get done this week, and so this one's a little bit delayed. But now the stamps are available, and so if you like them, you will actually be able to pick them up right away. I know that sometimes people find it frustrating to see the stamp and then find out that they have to wait a few days to actually go ahead and purchase it. This is the Fox Hollow stamp set, and it actually comes with well, it doesn't come with, but there's coordinating dies available. And I was really excited about that because the foxes are some of my favorite images from Gerda Steiner Designs. I'm going to be doing a little no-line watercoloring here with some Winsor Newton watercolor markers. I stamped the Fox Hollow image onto the watercolor paper. This is the Winsor Newton watercolor paper. It's meant to work with these watercolor markers. And so I also took the image and traced it with one of the orange watercolor markers, and I'm going to start pulling the colors out from the edge. I'm really impressed with these watercolor markers. They are artist quality, so it's no surprise to me that they work so well, but when you compare them to, say, distress markers, they really do give you that watercolor look direct to paper, so I don't have to scribble them out on a sheet somewhere else to get this watercolor look. I can apply it directly to paper, and the easiest way I find is to start by outlining the image, as you usually do want to emphasize those edges there when you're doing some no-line watercoloring. Even if you really do want to wind up softening them, you can really work with these markers. The more water you add, the more that they will react, just like watercolors. I really admire how much they are truly like watercolor, in the sense that they continue to react, that you can pull them up, and they're, to me, a little bit a different look than the Inktense pencils, which are pretty similar in the sense that you can apply them right to paper and spread them out. However, the Winsor Newton markers, you can apply them to wet paper, which you can't do with the Inktense. And I also find that they give a more soft watercolor look, so if that's particularly what you're into, as that is what some people really admire about watercolor, is that soft look, then the Winsor Newton markers are a better choice, because the Inktense are, as their name suggests, very intense in their color, and so it's not going to give you that soft faded out look that I am trying to achieve today. As you can see, once I have spread most of the color around from the edges, I'm going back in to add some shadows and emphasize where the lines in the stamped image are. You should use those to help you know where the shading should be. And while I mentioned that you don't have to scribble them off onto the craft sheet, you may have seen that I did that a little bit there, and that's just because I really wanted a much lighter color. So if you are looking to add some in color but not as intense, you certainly can use it in that way too, scribbling it off to the side. Once I have the orange all colored in, I'm going to go back and add in some of the details from the stamp with these Pitt Artist pens. They're just a waterproof pen, and I'm using it to add in the eyes and the nose once again. And I'm looking carefully at the stamp to see what details should have been in there, like so that I didn't miss the eyelashes, for example. I also added just a very small touch of color, again scribbling it off and adding in some water to make a really faded out color for the tail so it wasn't pure white. Once I had the fox cut out with the coordinating die cut, I'm ready to create my background. I started by putting a die cut down, a circle die, and tracing it to get a perfect circle. Obviously you could just trace any circle you happen to have on hand. And my idea was to create a wreath of sorts, but using snowflakes. So I have the two small snowflakes from the stamp sets. I know that most Christmas stamp sets contain snowflakes, so obviously you could do this with a variety of stamp sets, but I do think that these foxes are pretty unique. I really love foxes at Christmas time. But then I think what's great is that some of these images could be used year-round. I traced down the circle in pencil, and now I am going to stamp around it. But before I start the stamping, I did try to erase it a little bit, just because I don't want you to see the pencil line through the stamping. And once you stamp the ink down, it's going to be much harder to erase the pencil line, but you do need it there for reference. So just try to keep it as light as possible. And I start by stamping a sort of circle. I'm not trying to stamp directly on the circle, and I'm also not trying for an exact pattern. I did not want them all to be in line, and I also didn't want it to be too blue, purple, blue, purple, blue, purple. You know, I don't want it to be just an, what we call an A-B pattern in kindergarten, first grade. And so I have the blue, which is Mermaid Lagoon. It's a distress ink, and the purple, which is the Wilted Violet. And while they aren't necessarily, distress inks aren't known for their solid stamping, they do a great job on these smaller stamp sets. I would not recommend them for sentiments. As you saw earlier this week when I tried to stamp a sentiment with them, it didn't come out 100%. So once I had one ring around the circle area, I started building up the edges, and what I decided that I wanted to do was look like the snowflakes are sort of falling off the wreath and sort of fading out to the background. But rather than to create a fade with color, I'm just going to create a fade in the density. And so the snowflakes will be really dense around the fox and in the center there, and then I will start to sparsely stamp the snowflakes as it goes out towards the edge, as if the snowflakes are sort of breaking off the wreath area and floating away. I decided to mix it up and stamp both different snowflakes in both different inks, so there was more interest rather than the larger snowflake always being purple or always being in the blue color there. So as I go out to the edges too, I like to think about stamping some of them just slightly off, again to kind of add to that feeling of them floating away, randomizing them a little bit. Once I had a sufficient amount, I went in and added the Peace on Earth sentiment, because I thought with the sleeping fox and the pretty soft colors here that that sentiment particularly went well. And I am going to attach the fox with some foam tape just for a slight bit of dimension. And then I decided again to go in with some gems. I've been using my gems a lot more lately. So I've always mentioned I do like to make sure I go back and try to use some of those products, because I could just use stamps and inks and be perfectly happy coloring mediums, that sort of thing. But, I have a whole craft room full of all kinds of crafty odds and ends. So I'm just going to take some of the blue and purple gems and place them in the centers of snowflakes kind of randomly, thinking about not making them too dense, but also to reinforce that same sort of motif where there's more in the center and less as they go out, to just add a little bit of sparkle and shine. I love sparkle and shine on Christmas cards. And that's it for this card today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're interested in more crafting tutorials, including Newton's Nook designs or clean and simple cards like this, please subscribe to my channel, and I'll leave you some Newton's Nook designs videos in the description below, as well as holiday cards, if that's what you'd like to see more of. Remember that the Newton's Nook Designs holiday release is now available, and so you can follow my link to their website to check them out as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.